Well, hi guys, welcome to the Uncensored Patriots. Today we've got Lee Harris, political commentator and independent media. Welcome on, Lee. It's been a while, mate. How you been?
Very well, thanks. And thank you very much for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely lovely having you on, mate, as always. So yeah, mate, honestly, let's start off with what's been
What
going
couple
on,
of
mate.
weeks it's been, eh?
Say again?
What couple of weeks it's been. Lots of news.
Oh, mate, honestly. I was just going to say, if you could just quickly explain to the audience, just brief summary, how you got into politics and how you decided to start being a commentator on politics, and then we'll just bring everything up to speed, and then we'll carry on with the recent events that's been taking place on the UK political spectrum.
Goodness me, right. Well, I got into politics probably in around 2009, that sort of, and it was purely an accident. There was a guy who I sort of indirectly knew to say hello to, who lived in the same street with me where I used to live in Southampton. And he was delivering leaflets. I didn't know what he was delivering, but he was just delivering leaflets. I drove back from work and saw him doing it. And he had a really bad leg, right? He had a walking stick to help him walk. And he had quite a few houses to deliver to. So I just felt sorry for him a little bit and sort of said, all right, Malcolm, do you want a bit of help? And to cut a long story short, I helped him deliver all these leaflets, and it turns out they were Lib Dem leaflets. So I'm letting people know a little bit about me, which I'm not particularly proud of. But that's how I got into politics. So he said to me, we started delivering these leaflets, and he said to me, if you're interested in politics, why don't you come down to one of our next meetings? And I was being quite polite. So I just said, sure, why not, Malcolm? Sort of, and then went along anyway. And I found myself at a Lib Dem meeting, and it kind of went from there. But back then, I just want to stress, back then, I wasn't left or right back then. I hadn't really, yes, I was interested in politics, but no more than the kind of normie. I just kind of like watched the headlines a little bit. And apart from that, I didn't really pay much attention. So I wasn't really left or right. For me, it was just an introduction into how UK politics worked. I'd never experienced it before, not once. So I found it quite interesting it was compelling, at least, to listen to people talk about it. And the thing that I was good at, and the thing that I got feedback from the Lib Dems I was good at, was canvassing. So going around and door knocking and talking to people about politics. I really enjoyed it for just talking to people. So that is how I was introduced into politics initially, but it didn't take me long to realize that I didn't really feel like I fitted in with the Liberal Democrats. But back in 2010, I got involved with the 2010 election, and I helped Chris Huhne. I don't know if you remember him. He's a Lib Dem Secretary of State eventually, actually. But I helped him win his seat in 2010. I was parliamentary counting agent. Got heavily involved with the count and how that works. And then pretty much shortly after that, I was starting my own business. So my life changed a little bit. I'd found where I kind of started to form my own political philosophy anyway. And because I was starting my own business, I was a bit more business oriented. I just felt more at home with conservative values. And which was really odd to me because I came from a very left-wing family. I was a Lib Dem. But just naturally listening to the Conservatives and then listening to it's like listening at the time, just listening to Cameron or listening to Nick Clegg. And I found myself agreeing with Cameron on what I thought were Conservative policies back then, more so than the Liberal Democrats. So eventually I kind of just naturally moved across to the Conservatives. And then Brexit came along, so there's a bit of a gap. And then Brexit came along. And that pretty much was the turning point for me. Like a lot of people, I approached that without any previous bias. I went into it with a completely open mind. But I felt like I was a bit radicalized by Brexit almost. And it genuinely kind of solidified my position, I think, on the right of politics. And that's how I got into politics. In terms of like GB News and the commentating and stuff, I spent a long time probably on Twitter, or as it was back then, Twitter, now X. Spending my time clipping the BBC. Predominantly, I sort of came to prominence during the Brexit referendum, and that was because I genuinely couldn't get my head around this gold standard that was supposed to be the BBC was all of a sudden, you know, basically telling the United Kingdom that voting to leave the European Union was a very, very bad idea and everybody must stay in the European Union. It was just so blindingly obvious, and I couldn't stand the bias. So I literally, I didn't do much posting apart from just posting videos of blatant BBC bias, and my account just went absolutely mental. I started getting my tweets are appearing on the news. This was, you know, years and years and years ago, and eventually I got a call from GB News. Sorry, they contacted me via Twitter, and we eventually spoke on the phone. And they said, "Do you want to come on and do like a 2-minute stint every Saturday for, you know, we're predominantly on Nana's show, but it did actually end up being more than Nana's show. But I did that for literally 2 or 3 years. So for 2 or 3 years, every single Saturday, around, I don't know what time it was, around 4:30. It was either the 1:30 slot or the 4:30 slot I'd do. I was there every weekend doing a 2-minute slot. And then I just had a call from Nana, and she said, "We'd, you know, love to have you in the studio," and then it just started from there. So for the next couple of years after that, it's taken me to where I am today. And now I do, you know, GB News a bit. I do BBC Radio. I'm on BBC Radio every other week doing their paper review. I do lots of independent media, which is probably the bit I love the best. Stuff like this, and yeah, that's kind of where I am today. Gobshite on Twitter, basically, and still am proudly,
mate. I've got to say that's incredible how your career has literally opened up, literally just from sharing tweets and sharing what you thought about what was going on within regards to UK politics, to then progressing onto GB News, then contacting yourself. Yeah, I've got to say, mate, Twitter. You know, love it or hate it, it does open up opportunities to people.
Big time. I've met some fantastic people, including you, you know, through X. People that I've met, including you, going for a drink with. You know, I've found it genuinely one of the coolest experiences. You can hate Twitter just as much as you love it, don't get me wrong. But honestly, I would say 99% of the people that I've hooked up with on X and I've met have been some of the best people I've ever met.
No, I've got to say, I've met some lovely people, and like you said yourself a minute ago when we met up for a beer, mate, it was really nice meeting you. And so we're long overdue. Another spontaneous impromptu meet.
Yeah, we'll have to do that again soon, mate. Definitely,
100%. So I want to just traipsing back a little bit. We're talking about the BBC. Now they've been showing themselves up massively at the moment. I mean, to the point where you've got the leader of the free world wanted to sue them for 1 billion for doctoring his speech on was it the 6th of January?
Yeah,
that is absolutely horrendous, mate. And I literally, and do you know what? It's when that all come out, I was literally just like, yes, like, do you know what I mean? Because it's like, they protected paedophiles and employed people who have gone on to come out as paedophiles for a very long time. Jimmy Savile, you know what I mean? You've had these cases with Hugh Edwards. Do you know what I mean? You can go on, right? So the fact that they are now in the spotlight under the President of the United States is biblical. So I want to know what your thoughts are about that.
No, you summarised it well, mate. It is huge. This is massive. And I listened to Trump's clip a minute ago or this morning where he sat down with one of the news networks, and you can tell he's taking this incredibly seriously. When he talks about it, this wasn't just a subject he sort of touched on and then just spoke about something else. He's focused on it, and rightly so. You know, the BBC for me. Well, let me talk about the reactions first. What I found the most striking about this, okay, so people who know the BBC know that this is exactly like the BBC. Yes, they've been caught this time, but I guarantee you they've done this many times before, and some of it wouldn't. And let's not forget, this actually wouldn't have come to the surface had a whistleblower at the BBC not actually gone public with it. The BBC knew about this for months. They've known about what they've done for months, and they just hoped it was going to go away. So they were already in a mindset where they weren't going to admit to it, and they weren't going to say openly, publicly, we have done this, we're very sorry. They were going to try and get away with it, which is just typical of the BBC. But the reaction is, it's not an eye-opener, but it's made me think long and hard about how the BBC was able or is able to get away with what it's been doing for so long. And part of that is you see, for example, like Lisa Nandy, when she spoke in Parliament yesterday about the BBC, the kind of base point of her speech, the foundations of her speech was, the BBC is a wonderful institution that must be protected at all costs. Of course, they make mistakes and we'll work on them. But fundamentally, the BBC is definitely here to stay. You're all going to carry on paying for it, and it doesn't really matter how bad they are. Now, that is not an isolated opinion. That opinion will be pretty much the entire Labour Party's opinion. It's definitely the entire Liberal Democrats' opinion. It wouldn't surprise me if that opinion is slightly weaker on the far left, because they're so far left. They think that the BBC is actually right-wing, that they're just nuts. They should be completely kept out of this conversation. But you can start to see now how the BBC for decades, absolutely decades, believe that they are untouchable. And they are untouchable when you have the people in charge, the people who will decide what happens to the BBC, kind of treat it like a religion that must never be criticised. So of course they're going to, if you know you're never going to be scrapped, right, or got rid of, if you know you're never going to be really held to account, if you know that, a good 50, 60, maybe even higher percentage of all of our politicians will never vote to get rid of you, you're completely untouchable. Oh, and the license fee, obviously, you're guaranteed income as well. So you combine all of those things. It's a toxic mixture to create a toxic culture of bias, because there's no one within the BBC that can keep them on the straight and narrow. One of the biggest things that I've really wanted to say about this whole thing is they're saying about, the question is the BBC institutionally biased? I can't believe they're even asking this as an open question. The BBC is clearly institutionally biased. And this is why this Trump clip is so powerful, because what they've done, right, if the BBC was institutionally impartial, right, so institutionally fair, then that video would have never seen the light of day. It would have never made it into playing it to the public, because the checks and balances would have stopped that. It would have made it impossible for that to go. The reason that was able to be aired is because every single part of the BBC, even the checks and balances, even BBC Verify, they're all institutionally biased. They do not see that they are biased. They're so that's the word, institutionally biased, that they do not see themselves being as biased. And I'm sure some of them do, and they don't care. So that this entire system, I mean, the way the left have reacted has been absolutely a joke. Do I think it's different this time? I do think it's a bit different this time. I think that this is serious enough now for the BBC. I think that they've got almost terminal reputation damage from this. I just don't think they recover.
What happened is that they managed to hold such a strong level of immunity against so many people that went against them, right? But we're not just talking about anybody now that's holding them to account. We're talking about the United States government and the president of the United States. That's very, very heavy weight pushing them down. So it's like to see them under the spotlight now of America and Trump, right? He's coming for the BBC now. So by rights, they should feel uneasy about that situation, because they're not going to be immune to the American government, let alone Donald Trump.
No, and I've seen a couple of people who I have very little respect for, to be brutally honest, like Robert Peston being one of them, tweeting out yesterday. Now he is quite often wrong, genuinely. I'm not just saying that. So you got to take it with a pinch of salt. But he's saying that the BBC haven't really got anything to worry about. The threshold isn't high enough for them to be worried about losing a lawsuit in the US. And I'm reading this thinking, how can that be possible? They've literally just been caught red-handed, and they've admitted it. As Trump said in this interview, they have admitted this is different to any other libel claim. You know, you're not going to court defending yourself against something that you want to prove that you didn't do. They have already openly admitted the offense, right? So they have admitted the offense of what they've done. So it's almost like a cut and dry case. Now, can Trump sue them for $1 billion? Probably not. I mean, I was looking at a couple of other similar cases that it's been in the hundreds of millions. Definitely, there have been previous, but there's never been anything that high. The closest one in the US was a Fox News payout, which was in the region of $750 million. That's the highest that's ever been paid, and that I think that was out of court in the end. I think it was settled out of court. So I honestly don't think Trump really. I think Trump knows that, and I don't think he really cares. It's almost like the process is the punishment, and rightly so, in this case, because you're not going to be able to punish them any other way. But I want to see Trump, and I want to see the Trump administration actually publicly punish the BBC. And by that, I mean, for instance, they could immediately have their press credentials pulled from the White House. I would love to see that permanently.
That would be amazing. Because like, look, we don't trust you as a news outlet. I mean, let's be honest, the British public have a vast majority thereof, us, haven't trusted the BBC for years, right? Because they're constantly, fabricating up their own little narratives. And obviously, if it doesn't ring true with what, this woke ideology that they all seem to believe in, and we're all constantly against it, they'll never air the truth, what's really going on in the UK. So, it's nice to know that, well, it would be lovely. I mean, let's be honest, it would be lovely if Donald Trump revoked, like you just said, their press pass to even be over in the White House. Yeah, you're not coming in the United States. You're not coming over here. You're not welcome to. You're not permitted to report back to the UK from within footstep of our country.
I think at the very minimum, and I think it's. I think he kind of has to do this. He, at the very minimum, is put the BBC on the naughty step. Give them some time out, where they are genuinely barred from the White House for a period of time. I would like to see that permanently. But
Lee, I don't like, the facts are out there. They protected people like Jimmy Savile, and it's like they've got an ongoing history, past and present, of them having, employees that are nonces. So it's how can they not be defunded already? Just from all of that, how are they still going?
Because of and you're right. I completely agree. They should not be in business now. In my view, it should. The whole principle of the license fee and the way the BBC set up is archaic. It's archaic, antiquated, completely unfair. But the reason is very clear, and it's become very clear to me, even more so over the last 24 hours. It's because the BBC, like many of our institutions, but the BBC is one of them, is treated like a religion. It's like the NHS. You must not criticize the BBC, or even, and I'm sure they'll think you're far right if you want to get rid of the BBC. That's the narrative that they will try and push. And let's not blame this all completely on Labour, although I think it's fair to say, of all the ideologies the BBC's would match, would absolutely be the Labour Party. They share the same views on gender ideology. They share the same views on immigration. They share the same views on a lot of things. So of course it's within Labour's interest to keep the BBC promoting their kind of progressive woke message. But but the Tories are the same. You know, the Tories had. I remember Boris Johnson, not long after he got elected, actually put forward the possibility that we were going to scrap the licence fee. I think the very limit they were going to have a vote on it.
That.
And what happened? All of the Tory wets turned on Boris and told him and stopped him from doing anything on it. So that just died a death. So the Tories are just as bad to blame as the Labour Party. But those two parties, the Uni Party, are responsible for why the BBC is the way it is. This kind of completely self-destructive bias organisation is because they've never really been held to account. They know they've got the support from the majority of politicians, so they're never going to get shut down. They've got the license fee guaranteed, again, kind of related to that last point as well. But they're getting their money in; they don't have to earn their money. And you combine all of these things, and the fact, by the way, that they're only employing people at the BBC that are from, you know, certain sections of society, not like normal working class people are very underrepresented at the BBC. There was a. I'm sure everyone mentions this, but there was a study done, a freedom of information request sent to the BBC to find out what newspapers that they buy as an organisation for everyone to read. And the Guardian, as you would expect, is by far the most subscribed for newspaper at the BBC. It just tells you all you need to know. It's rotten right from the inside out, just like the civil service, just like some of our other institutions. And this is why I think reform, should they win the next election, have got, it's just another example of what such a gargantuan task they have on their hands. How do you fix something like the BBC that is that far gone? And the truth is, you can't, right? You cannot fix it. Thought about this a lot. You could just go in and sack everybody, like I'd like to see at the civil service, and then completely restructure it. So, but that should not be the job of the state. Not in 2025. No. Not when I spend, you know, 30 quid a month on Prime, Netflix, Disney Plus for the little one, you know, and all of these. Although I do quite like the Star Wars stuff on Disney Plus because I'm a kid. You know, so I already spend 30 or 40 quid a month on all of this stuff to watch on the telly. It should not be the job of the state to provide something like the BBC anymore. You know, back in the 40s and the 50s or whatever, I can definitely see, and I myself, I've not always hated the BBC, probably like most people. I used to trust the BBC
until I grew to learn what they were really about and what they were covering up.
Yeah, for me it was Brexit.
In regard to their employees.
Yeah, for me, I feel naive that it wasn't earlier, but for me, the real eye-opener was Brexit. Because I went into that completely impartially, genuinely. I wanted to hear both sides of the debate. And it just so happened that a lot of the media that I was watching at the time was on the BBC. And it became, remember being, feeling stupid that I didn't see it earlier, but immense frustration that I could not hear the good, you know, from people, the good reasons why we should leave the European Union. For me, that was such a defining moment. It changed my outlook, not just on the BBC, but it changed my outlook on politics and this country in general. Because the BBC is very similar to other institutions that we've got, right? It's like Ofcom and like all of the other quangos, all the hundreds of quangos that we've got. They're all like the BBC. They're all Ofcom. Ofcom is literally built up of ex-BBC staffers. They've got like 20 people at Ofcom that are earning more than the Prime Minister. Yeah. I mean, the entire system is completely corrupt.
That's because you've got a good moral compass, mate. So you deep down, you know the things that have been coming out from the BBC, what they're about essentially as a broadcasting company, right? Is so morally wrong from all the stuff that they've been doing. So do you know what I mean? It sort of then factors you away from even like remotely supporting them. You know what side of the fence you're on. You know deep down, you know what's right and what's wrong, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you're on the other, like you are on the right side of the fence, mate. Because I can't agree with a broadcasting corporation that is forever protecting, you know what I mean, child molesters, this, that, and the other, and it's just disgusting, mate. And it's like, you know, people who want to continue paying the license fee. So basically, you are funding a paedophile organisation, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You've got to be a little bit backwards to continue doing that in light of knowing what they're really about.
Yeah.
Right.
I have my opinion on this. Now, I still pay the TV license, not for me, right? It's for my little girl and my wife, who, by the way, my wife is also changing her mind on this as well. By the way, I desperately try my hardest not to influence my wife on politics at all. But even she is quite frustrated with having to pay a license fee in principle for something that, she spends a small portion of her time watching still, because she still watches like Strictly and some of the programs on the BBC that aren't political. So she's not very political, my wife. You can tell by the way she rolls her eyes whenever she listens to me. So she's not very political, but even she is seeing it from just purely a logistics perspective. She can't justify. She's finding it difficult to justify paying for a TV license for something that, like say, when you compare it to the services you get from Netflix and Prime, it just seems utterly bizarre that, and she doesn't like the fact that if she wants to watch, I don't know, live streaming something on YouTube that like GB News on YouTube, she does watch a bit of GB News, not much. She doesn't ever watch it when I'm on it, but she understands the principle. So even what I'm trying to say is very badly is that the normies, right, the people that aren't even that political, do not understand why in 2025 we all have to pay a license fee on that basis. So I honestly believe that you could keep an element of the BBC. So let's say we get our way, right, and we can decide what happens to the BBC. Obviously, we would instantly scrap the license fee without a doubt. Straight away, that would be gone. And what happens to the BBC after that, in my view, is down to the BBC, because what we would put in is a subscription model, or they would have to come up with a subscription model. And do you know what? There will be a lot of people, I imagine millions, that will pay it. Right. But it's not guaranteed money. They will have to earn it. They will have to show that they are appealing to whoever they want to appeal to. So, if they want to carry on being a very left-wing organization, very progressive organization that's pro-trans rights and all of this nonsense, right, they can carry on doing it and see how many people pay for it. And they will get the feedback financially. But do I think that there is a place for the public to fund something like a single, not non-political, but a non-politically opinionated news channel or something like that from the BBC? Actually, I do. So, for example, like we saw yesterday with, this is not the best example, to be honest, but say like Remember It Sunday. I think it's unfair, this setup, but the BBC could provide a public service where they literally just have a camera at events and they're just showing an event, and you can go onto a kind of government website or, where you can watch something that way. That's becoming less of a thing now. I used to believe in that a bit more strongly. That's less of a thing now because GB News were at the Remembrance service, ITV News were there. There are other channels.
This leads me on to Keir Starmer laying that reef, mate. And
yeah, it's a good segue. Well, yeah, because you're ex-forces, mate. How did it make you feel?
I'm taking a turn with my language, mate, but there's so much. There's so much.
Well, I can say it. Keir Starmer is a wanker.
He is. All right, you set the tone, mate. He is. He's more than a wanker, though, mate. Honestly, it is beyond words. But the fact that man, right, can go and lay that reef, knowing on how much rot he's embedded into our country since he's been in power with the Labour government, and it's like, it's even moving on to the fact where he's undermining British soldiers, right? Because obviously, he's we're at that point now in this country where British soldiers or potential recruits aren't wanting to join the army because they're worried of you know, when they become a British soldier, they then got to worry about having a lawyer behind their back when they go out on an operational tour. And because Keir Starmer's basically put into place, even though you fought for your country, you know, we're like, you know, 20 years later, I'm gonna make sure that I pull you up on something that I didn't agree with in modern day politics today that wasn't valid 20 years ago, and punish you for it.
I couldn't agree more, mate. It is disgusting to see. I found it difficult to watch. Of course, the Prime Minister has got to lay a wreath, right? But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about how it looks.
Yeah,
and
he doesn't care.
No, he doesn't care, or he does care, but he cares about everything other than the United Kingdom and the British people.
Yeah,
I don't know what he cares for. To be brutally honest, it's hard to tell. The man is vacuous. But yes. I too found it very difficult watching him. In fact, I didn't. I kind of watched him for a few minutes and then I flicked over to something else briefly and then went back to it later. But you're absolutely right to describe that this is a man who basically his entire life has focused, not too dissimilar, by the way, to his best mate, Richard Hermer. You know, both of these people have spent their entire life dedicating themselves to be against the British state. You know, Keir Starmer has represented people who want to destroy our way of life. He's represented terrorists. And all this cab rank rule stuff is absolute nonsense. There is an element of choice. Robert Jenrick's been very good on this, especially when he attacked Richard Hermer. You know, explained full well that this has got nothing to do with the cab rank rule. This is a choice. And they have both made it their duty to try and it doesn't matter what it is, they are on the other side batting for the other team against this country. And then you can look at domestic policy, like his the one that got me recently. I ratioed him on one of his tweets about patriotic renewal rubbish that he goes on about.
Yeah,
but he's just successfully won that case in court. Regarding the Bell Hotel in Epping, and we knew about the arguments that they'd made in previous court hearings, but there'd been no judgment. Now we've just had the judgment, and the judgment was in favour of the government, who successfully argued that the rights of illegal migrants are more important and hold more weight and value than the rights of the locals in Epping, therefore the rights of the British people. So everything that man does, everything he does is against us. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and the government, their first duty is to keep the British public safe, no matter what their politics are. And this is a man who's just gone to court to argue to keep the Bell Hotel full of illegal, unvetted, undocumented migrants, literally days after they've imprisoned an illegal migrant for sexual assault. I couldn't sleep at night. I just couldn't do it. You know, you're the Prime Minister. If I saw what had happened at that hotel, I would have closed it and I would have moved them. I mean, if I was Prime Minister, I'd be mass deporting all of them immediately. But I'm trying to put myself in Keir Starmer's brain, which is rather empty. But everything that this man does is against the British people, is against our best interests. So that's why I found it incredibly difficult watching him laying that wreath, because I know he doesn't believe in this country. He's a globalist. He doesn't think that the United Kingdom has the ability to govern ourselves. This is a man, he's a technocrat, and he thinks governing should be done at a distance, and that the people who are being governed should have as little to say on that matter as possible. And I despise him. He's the worst Prime Minister that we've ever had. I did not even think myself that he would be this bad.
It's the same. It's the same way as when, you know, the atrocities in Southport took place with those poor girls on the streets that had their lives taken. When he went up there and made an appearance, right, the man wouldn't even acknowledge the general public, right?
19 seconds.
Someone was trying to talk to him and he literally just blanked everyone, remained a complete mute, right? Was there, went there literally just for a photo opportunity, just for a bit of, do you know what I mean? Just for his little media coverage, just to show, oh, look, yeah, I'm here, I care. No, you don't care because you've got zero emotion. You as a man have got zero emotion about what's happened here, what's happened to those three girls, right? And it's literally when he literally he oozed that emotion when he went and laid that wreath. It's like he doesn't care about the you know what I mean, the British soldiers who's lost their lives. That, like you just said a minute ago, he's the most anti-British prime minister going. He cares more about giving legal aid, giving foreign aid, than fixing his own country and helping our own homeless veterans on the streets of the UK and just ordinary homeless people, right? I mean, he really does not care about no one, mate.
I mean, when Southport happened, I don't want to bring this too much on a downer.
Yeah,
I'm not. I
just wanted to just highlight that because he is the man. I was just saying, like, he carries zero emotionally.
Totally. And I was about to agree with you. I mean, when Southport happened, I'm not ashamed to admit I was broken. Probably like a lot of people. I was in tears when that happened, and I know the country felt very similar. And then to watch Keir Starmer go to Southport, he was there for 19 seconds, and he then literally went straight from there to a party in Downing Street, which he'd arranged to happen on the same day. So within literally hours of him leaving Southport, 19 seconds, he was there for 19 seconds, he went straight to a party in Downing Street. Now, I still to this day can't comprehend that. Remembering how I was, I can only speak about this personally. I know
that just goes to show you, mate, what caliber of a man he is.
Absolutely. I would have been broken. I would have wanted to speak to as many people there as I could 100%. As my role as Prime Minister.
Yeah.
I don't care what criticisms I would have got. I just would have hugged those people. They were broken. Those people were broken. They still are broken. Yeah. And let's not forget, after that, he then withheld. He withheld information about Axel Rudabikana's links to terrorism. He lied. He held that, and he made up an excuse that this was somehow to stop contempt of court. And I couldn't believe it. Even Paul Brand from ITV and all the left wing politicians were going, no, mate, that this is not contempt of court. You had a window right at the start when all this was happening, when we were talking about it, to say that there were that he had terror links involved, that he had rice in. The people in his street should have been made aware of that. You knew, and you could have told. Why didn't you tell us? And he just rambled on about how this was some sort of like protecting the process, and it was all bollocks. It was all complete nonsense. So what I can't believe is if you think of all the things that have happened since then as well. It's not just Labour. Keir Starmer has been a walking disaster since before he got into office. That I can completely understand why he is the most unpopular prime minister in.
I say he's a communist, but people disagree with me. People say, "How's he a communist?" Well, come on.
There are. He's a socialist.
He's how much of our free speech is he suppressed now, up until this point?
Yeah.
He advocates that. Oh, Great Britain, I'm really proud of the free speech the free speech, the level of free speech we hold in our country. When he was at a media appearance with Donald Trump, right? So he's basically point blank lying, right, on global television. Yet along comes the Online Safety Act, right? Along comes the censorship. Along comes arresting people for tweets, for having an emotional outburst, right? Within regards to atrocities that are taking place in our country. We're not allowed to have an emotional outburst and think out loud on our social media platforms, because we'll get arrested and we'll get put in prison for a year, like Lucy Connolly was, or like Wayne O'Rourke, who just got released from prison, right?
Yeah.
For a tweet. It's pathetic, mate. And that just proves how much of a liar the man is.
It proves
right?
how easily he lies as well. How easily he
He's
lies.
a compulsive liar, Lee. He's
Yeah.
an absolute compulsive liar.
I mean, with the China spy case that collapsed, just to touch on this quickly. I mean, even Dan Hodges is sort of like Dan Hodges is a very strange social media user. You know, you hate and love his tweets at the same time. But he made the observation about the China spy case that collapsed, that Keir Starmer, and this isn't the first time that he's done it either, lied to the House of Commons five times, like Lammy did, where he withheld that information. He directly lied to the House of Commons 5 times. And Dan Hodges, I haven't got it in front of me. I should have done. He listed exactly how he lied and when he lied, and it's just clear cut, right? He's like, where is the accountability? Why isn't it like the Conservatives? You know, if can you, I mean, Boris was kicked out of a cake. Can you imagine if he'd lied, like at which he did, but lied as much and consistently as Keir Starmer did on such serious matters, on matters of national security? It's just easy for him to do. He's the most dishonest, properly the most dishonest prime minister that we've ever had, and that's saying
this is where the hypocrisy comes in. This is where the double standards come in, right? The two-tier judiciary, right? Because it seems that all these MPs, right? If you get elected as an MP, it's almost like you get given like a special immunity within regards to getting punished by the law if you step out of line by the law, but you're not going to get punished because you're an elected MP. Let's use Ricky Jones as a prime example, right? Yeah. When he was out at that protest in public, recorded on video, and he said, we need to cut the throats of these right-wing fascists. We need to cut their throats and stuff like that. That's inciting murder. You're basically inciting people to cut right-wing people's throats. And it's like, but how can you get away with that, be caught on video saying that in a public setting, out on the street, among hundreds of people at a protest, right? Mm-hmm. And not get put in prison for it? Absolutely.
And it's the same with there's loads of examples, but the other one that just jumps out because he's a Labour MP is that Mike Amesbury. Mike Amesbury literally kicked the shit out of one of his constituents at the pub. We all saw the video. He punched him while he was on the floor.
He was literally going in.
Put the boot in, and he got a suspended sentence. He didn't even go to jail. And that is, it's a very similar situation to the BBC. Like the judiciary is exactly the same. Keir Starmer isn't, and the Labour Party isn't actually at the BBC making decisions. He isn't actually within the judiciary making decisions on these cases. What he does, certainly with the judiciary, is he kind of sets the scene for them of what they can or how they can and can't judge a case through the Sentencing Council. And we know that the Sentencing Council, for example, are absolutely nuts as well. They're batshit. They are completely nuts. This is a Sentencing Council that, if it wasn't for Robert Jenrick, purely because he's there to make a difference, I'm sure Reform would have done the same. Anyone would have done the same thing. It's just obviously has that position of shadow justice secretary. They were just about to put in legislation that for exactly the same crime.
Lee, I've lost you there, mate. Lee? We're back.
Sorry about that. So what was I saying? I was saying that basically that if it wasn't for Jenrick, right, and it wasn't for checks and balances from the Tories at the time, you know, the sentencing council would be putting people in prison who are, you know, giving longer sentences, I should say, to people who are white, ethnically British, and ethnic minorities would be getting a lesser sentence. And that's it. The whole system, our judiciary, the BBC, all of these other quangos, the civil service, the rot is so deep, man. It's going to take a very long time to fix it, but we'll get there eventually.
This is what I'm saying, mate. So, but basically, at the moment, what I was going to say was, we talked about Keir Starmer and the Labour government. Keir Starmer is a very hot water at the moment himself, isn't he? Within regards to, I mean, what I've heard recently over the last day.
His days are numbered.
Yeah, you know, and apparently Wes Streeting has got a secret plan to oust him from his position as Prime Minister.
A not so secret plan is that. Oh, it's funny actually, because Wes Streeting has been on manoeuvres for a very long time. I mean, there was a story that came out probably even at least 6 months ago, that from someone within Parliament who basically said that Wes Streeting had been in all of the, you know, all of the bars, buying people drinks and stuff, and being very nice to everybody, just trying to smooth everything. I mean, to be honest, I don't know why I'm saying this. He probably is better suited. At least the man has got a personality, right? There is a personality there. He probably would be a better Prime Minister than Keir Starmer, but that's not, the bar is so low. There's nothing that Labour or Wes Streeting can do to turn around their fortune at all, because fundamentally the reason we're in this mess, or partly in this mess, is something from decades long kind of institutionalized leftism, and it's just I don't think it will make any difference really to them at the next election. The Labour Party are finished either way.
But yes, denying it though, Lee. But now they're denying it.
Of course they are.
The Labour government are denying it. Oh, no, we're not planning to oust Keir Starmer from power.
Yeah, I think that's one of those denials that everybody knows is the denial is confirmation that it's true. In my book, of course it is. I mean, look, at the end of the day, the writing is already on the wall, right? Under Keir Starmer, both his personal polling and the Labour Party polling is atrocious. It's the worst it's ever been in their history. Even Jeremy Corbyn was doing better than this. You know, they are genuinely.
His poll results clearly indicate that he's one of the most despised prime ministers we've ever had.
Yeah, and we just had some stats come out that I know it was only a poll, but this is a poll that's been pretty much the same for the last over 100 polls, to show that Reform, and I think the Greens, mostly Reform though, like 90%, are going to wipe out the entire cabinet. Right, they're all going to lose their seats. There is not a single safe seat in the country currently for the Labour Party, possibly down in Brighton. But they all know what's coming, and they know that if they don't get rid of Keir Starmer, if Keir Starmer stays, then nothing's going to change anyway. It's just going to carry on getting worse. They know that, hence why they're making manoeuvres. But if they don't do something, they are all going to lose their seats anyway. So it's why, you know, why wouldn't they do it? Why wouldn't they make a move on Keir Starmer? They've got literally nothing to lose. There is not a single poll that I've seen, again, in over 100 polls, that will show that Labour have got any chance of winning the next election. So why not? You know, if I was Wes Streeting, I'd be like, yeah, let's just go for it. I don't think they could have done it until this sort of time. What's it been? 16 months since the last election. There is the reason he hasn't gone already is because they don't want to appear to be just like the Tories, and as soon as they elect a prime minister or win an election, they change prime ministers every 2 minutes, right? So they're trying to avoid that. But we're now approaching a window, in my view, where that can happen. It's a 5-year term, assuming that they do the whole term. We are edging our way. We're not quite, but edging our way to being halfway through that. I think that's a reasonable window for them to make a move now. And do you know what? The Labour Party couldn't get any worse press if they tried anyway, right? So what are the press going to do? Say, oh, here they are changing prime ministers, but everyone's going to go, yeah, but they're already doing really badly in the polls. Maybe this will help them. They're not going to get much criticism from the left-wing media. Of course they won't.
It's not just him though, mate. You've got Shabada Mahmood, the Home Secretary, that still has left the borders wide open when we've got this ongoing invasion of illegal migrants coming across the channel every single day.
Oh, but don't worry about that, Shawnee, because we've got the one in, one out scheme that's deterring everyone.
Oh, exactly. We'll take one in, but when we take one in, we're going to release another one. So we're not actually progressing with deporting a significant number. It's literally just like we're going to take one, we're going to give you one back. So it's not really going to change the figure. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Even if that scheme was working properly and they weren't just coming back again. So before we even get to that,
one of them came back, didn't they?
Two of them.
Sorry.
Yeah, we've just had another one. Literally yesterday, just came straight back again. So even if you take that to one side, we'll come on to that in a second, right? The scheme on its own is fundamentally flawed. You can't stop migrants coming across by sending one back and then just getting another migrant back. That's not going to bring the overall numbers of illegal migrants coming down if we're just swapping them with France. So on its own, the scheme is completely ludicrous. But then to top it off, like you just said, we sent one back, right? He was an Indian national. France loved that because they've got an agreement with India, so they just sent him straight to India. I mean, and by the way, so have we. We also have an agreement with India. We could have sent that guy straight back to India ourselves if we wanted to. That was the first guy. Yeah. The second guy, I think, was announced yesterday or something. I haven't got the details on where he's from or anything like that. But he just got here, got sent back to France, and then just got on the ferry back again, just like the other guy did. That proves, like we didn't need to be told this anyway, but it completely proves that it's not ever going to act as a deterrent. It's just not going to happen. No. It's more of an inconvenience than anything else. You have to just come across on the boat again. But that's exactly what they've been doing.
This is why
the whole system's completely broken.
But mate, this is why you've had 9 full generals literally write him a letter, right, stating to him, we need to come out of the European Court of Human Rights. Right, the ECHR. We need to take ourselves out of that because that's the only legal framework that they're coming up with in saying that we can't put the Royal Navy in the Channel because it goes against these illegal migrants' human rights. So it's like, well, these illegal migrants that are coming over by boat, the crimes that they're committing are forever on the rise, right? Within regards to rape, murder, sexual assaults. Right. And it's literally nothing's getting done about it. Nothing's getting done. Like, what are they doing? You've got David Lammy that's accidentally releasing them onto the streets from prison. How do you even do that? How do you even do that? First it was 1, then it was 2. Now, apparently it's 91 that's been released. Do you know what I mean? So it's like. And then his face when he was in Parliament the other day, and when he got told when he kept on dancing around the question when he couldn't answer the question, how did you manage to release that migrant back out onto the streets from prison? How do you accidentally do that? And he got asked 5 times, he could not answer the question. But then you see the colour just drain from his face when he gets notified that, can you explain why a second, prisoner has been released out onto the streets again, which currently the police are conducting, a manhunt for this person that's been accidentally released, and then and now it's sort of like I just don't understand how people can keep backing these people when they're constantly showing themselves up day in and day out. How is it physically possible to accidentally release an illegal migrant, someone from prison back out into the streets? We accidentally done that. And then we also, with Kabatu, we also accidentally gave him £76 in his pocket so he could then venture off into London on the run for 3 days before he got rearrested. And then, okay, we've deported him back to where we came from, but
you know, I'm giving him £500 so he could resettle himself nicely, even though he sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl in Epping. Like, and this is the David Lammy, mate. Like,
it's disgusting, mate. And what it's and what it
shouldn't
shows
have got
you,
a penny.
eh?
Shouldn't have got a penny. Should have
No,
just
of course you
put him
shouldn't.
back to where he came from. That was it.
No, and if he'd have said, "Well, I'll kick up a sting," whoever was border control, so you can do what you like, mate. You're getting on that plane and you're going. Full stop.
Yeah.
There's no, and that's what frustrates me about this. It's not just the Labour Party. This is a Conservative Party as well. I was on a podcast with Rupert Lowe before the previous election, and we had a Conservative MP on there, and I said exactly the same thing. Right, they're all talking tough on deporting people and ignoring the ECHR. Yet when Rishi Sunak was Prime Minister, we had a plane on the tarmac with deportees on there ready to go. And because of one judge in Strasbourg, they call them pajama injunctions. One judge in Strasbourg was able to make a ruling that the British government decided that they had to adhere to. They don't have to adhere to these legislations anyway. No, we absolutely have to leave the ECHR, but we don't need to obey it if we don't want to. There was a good case of this with giving prisoners the votes under David Cameron. The European Court of Human Rights insisted or tried to insist that the United Kingdom would give prisoners the vote while they're in prison. That's a long-standing tradition and a right one in this country, that if you break the law and you end up with a custodial sentence, you lose some of your rights. And one of those rights is to vote at the general election. Very, very good principle, if you ask me. And in the end, it took some time, but in the end, David Cameron, I remember the speech because I remember watching it, and he said, "Over my dead body will we be giving prisoners the vote in the United Kingdom, over my dead body." So it can be done. And the problem with the previous Tory government is they were full of conservative wets, essentially liberal Democrats, globalists, Remainers, progressive conservatism, as you want to call it, who basically not that dissimilar to the Labour Party. I mean, you can look at a broad range of policies, including, net zero is a really good example. I mean, there's nothing between the two parties. You couldn't get a fag paper between the Conservative Party and the Labour Party. And what's happened is over decades between the two parties, they have ruled this country for over 100 years. They feel comfortable in their skin, just like the BBC does, because it's only ever been the Labour and the Conservative Party that swap hands. And there's certain things that they decided to agree on. They agree that really we should all be very pro net zero. They agree that we should be all really pro immigration. And they've agreed that we should have these kind of linked progressive views between the two main parties. And it leaves people like us without a voice completely, because we're not being represented by the BBC. We're seeing things happen in our judicial system that are just grossly unfair, like fundamentally going against the foundations of what this country was built on. And there's no representation for us. And it's like that throughout all of our institutions. It does, look at the education system. It's completely infested with woke ideology. They're teaching our kids to hate our country. They're teaching kids that there's 200 genders. I don't want my daughter learning any of that stuff.
No,
it's endemic in the education system.
My kids.
We've touched on the judiciary. We've touched on the BBC, Ofcom. The entire country is kind of just everything. All the foundations of this country has been infiltrated by the left. It's the kind of long walk through the institutions. And they've been able to do that quite successfully, something that the right are very complacent about. I mean, that's me being kind, by the way, to say that the Tories were complacent. I don't think they were complacent. I think it was a conscious decision to not want to get rid of an institution like the BBC and not to leave the European Union. These are all decisions that are made by people who I don't agree with, and there's no third option. And that's why it's been able to fester for so long, is because those two main parties don't deviate too much. Of course, there are things they disagree on, but there's not much deviation. They both think the NHS is a religion that can't be got rid of or changed in any way. They're too scared of the backlash. That's the Tories. Obviously, the Labour Party will never get rid of the NHS. You know, so there isn't anyone saying, apart from possibly Reform and others now, that's saying, hold on a minute, why don't we look at the German model of how they do their NHS? Why don't we actually stop paying the license fee if it's not, you know, Nigel Farage says it's taxation without representation. He's absolutely right to say that. All of these things in our society, none of them will ever change. None of them, if we carry on electing the Labour Party and the Conservative Party. We'll always pay the license fee. The BBC will never be reprimanded. We'll never ever see reform in the NHS. Our judiciary will carry on being completely one-sided and unfair. Our sentencing the same. Ofcom will be the same, still very left-wing. None of these things, all of our education system, you know, all of these things, none of them will change. None of them. Because why do I say that? I say that because we've got the evidence to prove it. We've got decades of evidence to prove it. Why would I go, oh, I don't know, let's give the Conservatives one more chance at the next election, when for the last 20 plus years, we've given them a chance. They've had their chance and they've done nothing. And of course, the Labour Party aren't dissimilar, because they're, like I say, you can't get a fag packet between them on some of their major policies. I'm done with it. Unless we get rid of these parties, nothing will ever change.
100%, mate. And like I say, within regards to the illegal migrants, because I can't stress it enough, something needs to happen within regards to these boat crossings, Lee, because I'm sorry, but everyone who throws the racist card out there at people like myself, who are continuously bringing it up, it is a massive threat to our country. We've got all of these men coming over every single day, right? You don't know what ideology's upstairs in their heads, right? They are out, you know, they come on. There's been so many arrests now, right? There's been so many crimes committed by these illegal, unvetted men, because there's no women or children on these boats. Let's have it right. There's not. There's no women and children on these boats coming over from Calais. There is not, right? So something needs to happen now. It's clear that the government aren't going to do absolutely nothing about it. It's clear the police aren't going to do nothing about it. So therefore, I mean, I'm not being funny. Let's just talk about the fact that my missus is too scared to go out and walk the dog at night now, because she sees them loitering around the area, right? Yeah. So, and all these crimes that are going on, all these stabbings that you're seeing on the news every other day, right? Committed by all these men that have come over here by boats that are going out stabbing people for no reason, right? You know, who have you had? Wayne Broadhurst up in Uxbridge. He got stabbed, right? Yeah, relentlessly stabbed for doing nothing, right? He done absolutely nothing wrong. He was out walking his dog, okay, by a migrant that came here in 2020 illegally by hiding in the back of a lorry, right? Who failed an asylum claim, right? And it's literally ongoing. So let's have it right. Something needs to happen. We've got to the point where people, the British people, right, are literally come to the conclusion that we've got to police ourselves now for our own protection and for our own safety of our family and our children.
And I think that mindset is happening. I really do. And this is why
I've already adopted it. I've already adopted that mindset.
Yeah, damn right. And you can see that it's spreading because of you can see the polling, right? If you know, this is one of the biggest subjects, one of the most important topics, immigration, if not the number one topic for the general electorate now in the United Kingdom. Now, if the mindset wasn't changing, we wouldn't see Reform constantly polling above 30%, which is a party, whether you like them or not, does represent, you know, properly sorting out the illegal immigration crisis and, of course, mass uncontrolled migration as well. But that party that represents that is doing very well in the polls. So the mindset is changing. Do you know, I kind of see that this whole incredibly awful situation with illegal migrants crossing the channel is coming to an end. I feel it. It feels a little bit like, do you remember when, I know this bear with me on this analogy, but do you remember when David Cameron went to the European Union, cap in hand, asking them to change? And if he wasn't going to change, he was going to hold a referendum. You know, he asked for concessions and stuff like that. Now, that moment was a flashpoint for the British public. The British public realised that no matter what we were going to do, no matter how hard we tried, the European Union wouldn't change and it would carry on being the same thing. Now, I kind of, and by the way, that led to a referendum and we then voted to leave the European Union. That's how significant that moment was. I kind of see the same sort of thing with Keir Starmer's Smash the Gangs effort, right? Because that involves going out to European countries and asking them to help us. And in the same way, David Cameron went over to the European Union asking them to help us and stuff. Excuse me. By the way, that was stuff we're already doing. It's excuse me, it's fake. It's fake anyway. Keir Starmer saying he's smashing the gangs, all these new arrangements. All these arrangements are already in place. But the point I'm trying to make is I think that we have to go through this almost. I think we probably could have made this decision a lot sooner, but we are where we are. I think we have to go through this. The British public will see, and if they aren't already seeing it, and I think a lot of them are, that you can't smash the gangs. You can't stop the boats if you want to religiously adhere to international law. You can't do it. And this is going to be yet another, I think this is Keir Starmer's David Cameron moment. So he's basically showing the British public, Keir Starmer is showing the British public that it can't be done, that you can't smash the gangs, that it doesn't matter how much rhetoric that he spouts before the election, he's not going to change anything. And the fundamental reason why, and this is why Nigel Farage and others, not just Nigel on this, have been very good articulating the reasons why. And it's very clear that we can't do it because, as you said, we are still members of the European Court of Human Rights, which means we either have to completely ignore them and breach the agreement we have with the ECHR or leave the ECHR. And I think that message now is ringing in the ears of normies, right? People who aren't as engaged in politics as we are, the same people that weren't as engaged in the European referendum but voted to leave the European Union. Those people, the silent majority, the people, the backbone of this country, the proper Brits, those people, the normies, they now understand two things because Keir Starmer has shown them, just like David Cameron showed us. Keir Starmer has shown them that you can't smash the gangs. He's not going to, this situation isn't going to improve before the next election. You and I both know it's going to just carry on getting worse. Yeah. So this, I think, is the flashpoint. I do feel slightly optimistic that we are coming to an end of this, but it's not going to be until the next election, until we vote. You cannot ever change the situation across the channel, just like you can't change the BBC, just like you can't change anything else, while those two main parties remain in power. And I'm not even sure, by the way, I'm not sat here saying Nigel Farage is going to fix everything. I think out of all of the politicians, he's got the balls to do it, hopefully, more than anyone else. But we didn't. The task is so gargantuan. We won't even begin to start to do anything about it until we get rid of those two parties. And then once we've got rid of those two parties, and we do have someone like Reform, maybe not Farage, but as Prime Minister, Farage as Prime Minister, we will start to see at least a beginning of real change. That we're coming out of the European Court of Human Rights. We are then fully responsible for the decisions that we make across the channel as a sovereign nation, of which we should have been doing in the first place. That it's absolutely right. We are well within our rights to put the Navy in the channel, even in the situation that we're in. They could call a national emergency. We've had ISIS terrorists crossing the channel. We've had sex offenders. We've had all these very bad people crossing the channel. That's already enough, especially with ISIS terrorists crossing the channel. 6 ISIS terrorists crossed the channel in 2023. There was a national manhunt. The security services came out and warned us, so we can Google it. It's in the papers. Just type in 6 ISIS terrorist channel and you can read all about it. That was in 2023. In 2023, the Conservatives should have called a national emergency, suspended all our agreements with the European Court of Human Rights with a with a bill in Parliament as a temporary measure, and they should have literally stopped those boats there and then on that day. But they're never going to do it, and we're never going to see any other proper change that we want with those two. I keep going back to it because it's the truth. It's the absolute God's honest truth. Nothing is going to change. All the things that we want to change about this country, none of it, not even a smidgen of it, is going to change with the Conservative or the Labour Party in power.
100%. Going to wrap it up now, but what I will say, mate, is the working class need to unite together to put an end to all of this, mate. Because like I've reiterated before earlier on in our conversation, the government and the police aren't going to do nothing to stop this problem. So
but we saw, I mean, people at the United Kingdom,
the working class man and woman, right, from all up and down the country to unite together and go out in force to stop all of this from happening, because this is such an existential threat to our way of life and a threat to life. As we've seen with the recent murders, the rapes, the sexual. Do you know what I mean? It needs to stop, mate. But Lee, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Sorry, did you want to finish off on something?
No, I was trying not to be too depressive, but I can't help it. It does feel like if something doesn't change, right? If we don't win, if by win I mean defeat the uni party by getting rid of those two parties. I honestly, I mean, can you imagine? So if Labour win the next election by default because we're all split or something like that, that will be almost a decade of socialism, almost a decade by the time we get to the next election. I just don't think we can cope with it. And I don't like using the word civil war, but every single day I'm amazed. Yeah. Well, every single day I'm just amazed. I keep thinking, oh, it can't get any worse. And then another story drops, the China spy case, then another story drops, prisoners being released. Then another story drops, someone's been murdered in the street by an illegal migrant. Then another, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. So, if I do worry, I think it would start off with civil unrest and it will get worse if we don't do something about it.
100%. Right, well, mate, thank you for coming on again. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Mate. Anytime.
Hope I'm getting better at these things. I'm still learning.
Me too.
I think I managed to do that all without swearing again, but yeah.
Yeah, if anything, I let the side down there. It's an emotional topic, mate. It is,
mate. It is.
We talk from the heart. We don't talk because it's fun. We talk because we have to.
100%. But listen, mate, I'll catch up with you soon, and thanks for coming on again.
Absolute pleasure, mate.
Take it easy, mate.